Welcome to the What I Meant to Say podcast. I'm your host, Wendy Jones, and I started these conversations because life doesn't give us do-overs. So this is a space where we get a chance to reflect and tell our story again, with more grace for ourselves, and hopefully make us all better for having listened. Today I'm talking to Monica Ruiz, mom, wife, actress, and South Bay native. We connected through a meditation group I was leading and our mutual love for yoga, only to discover that we have so much more in common. This conversation is a peek into the world of this down-to-earth and amazing wife and mom of two boys, who just also happens to be the actress at the center of the Peloton ad that stirred up so much controversy, and the it girl in one of my favorite movies about a boy. Monica is all about honesty, and that is exactly what you will love about this conversation. Welcome to the What I Meant to Say podcast. I'm so excited. This is my 7th episode.
Oh my gosh.
And this is Monica Ruiz.
Hello. I'm so excited to be here. This is really fun.
Yeah. So I was just saying before we started that when you follow your path, you just end up running into people that resonate with the things that you're doing. And that's kind of how the two of us met I was leading a Mindful Moms meditation group, and we started chatting before we got started. And then, of course, my next favorite thing, going into yoga. And then you ended up on the mat next to me. So we start chatting and we snapped a picture, like I like to do, just to put up my yoga moments on my story. And when I went to, and I remember asking you, do you mind, like, some people don't like to post all sweaty? And you're like, no, it's great. Like,
oh, yeah,
get on here.
Course.
And so when I went to tag you, I was like, like, actress, like, what? Why do I know? I don't know this girl. And then I was like, I thought she was a mom. So anyway, I had no idea that you had this background in acting and that you were the Peloton girl.
Oh my God.
And I didn't really know anything about any of that. So we connected as being moms and parents.
And that's where I like to connect with people first and foremost. Because that's who I've stayed in, like, kind of away from Hollywood, and all of my friends and family are not in the industry. And so I connect more on that level. When people start to talk about the industry, I start to, close up a little bit, because I just don't, like we were saying before, like the self-promotion and the talking about, like, getting places and what I've done and my, it's hard for me. It's really hard for me to do that. So I love when people have never seen me before, don't know what my job is, and they see me as like a mom dealing with, 2 little kids. And
that's what we connected on.
Yeah.
And so then I said, let's just have a conversation. Before I said, you want to do a podcast? But I said, let's just go have a conversation. And then we ended up talking for 2 hours the other morning.
I'm like, my life story. I had to text you afterward, like, I'm so sorry.
Oh, no, that's my favorite thing.
Conversation I leave, I'm like, I talked way too much. I talked way too fast.
No, that's my absolute favorite thing.
I never worry about revealing too much, because that's just like, my mom's that way. We've always been that way. It's sort of like, be an open book. People feel comfortable with you when you're that way. Share what you are comfortable sharing and what you're comfortable that may be repeated.
Yes.
But
yeah. And I feel like that's where the world is today. Like I have said 100 times over, I don't need anybody to be like me. I just need you to be real. Like, give it to me straight. And no, we don't know everybody, every ounce of detail. That's totally up to us. But there is something very naturally real about the way you share your story. So thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you tell me you
make it easy
well,
to share. Yeah. And I mean, not everyone is like that. Some people you're like, this person doesn't need to know any of these details about me.
So, should we just get the Peloton story off of the, okay, so tell me about what happened.
I've been doing commercials for a long time. And, like, I've been on your TV more than you would like to know. I mean, everyone that I know recognizes me, but it was just in this particular spot, it was supposed to just run for November and December. So I'm like, okay, whatever. It's just a holiday commercial, no big deal. Turns out they ran it during everything. So they ran it during sports. They ran it during, like, live sports. They ran it during every streaming that you could imagine. They ran it during every Bravo show that you could imagine. So everyone saw it. And so I think that's what made it so easy for everyone to jump on. Okay. Because it wasn't like, what are they talking about? It was like, anyone who was watching TV or streaming anything had seen it.
Yes.
And they'd probably seen it too many times. And so everyone started kind of picking it apart. And then it was just like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I'm driving my kids to daycare and I get this text from my sister and she's like, oh my God, Monica, like Good Morning America is talking about the Peloton commercial and they're asking if anybody knows the name of the actress in it. And everyone's like flooding, like people were reaching out to all of my friends on Facebook. I don't even have a Facebook anymore. I had to delete it because it tried to get hacked so many times. But everyone was reaching out to everyone I knew asking like, how do we get in touch with her? What's her name and all this stuff. And so finally one guy that like I used to know from bartending was like responded directly to them and gave them my name and contact info.
Oh my God.
So everyone started reaching out to me and my agents didn't know what to do. They really didn't know what to do. I mean, they're not like PR people. This kind of thing doesn't really happen with commercials.
Yeah.
You know, so nobody knew what kind of advice to give me. There were people that were like, capitalize on it. You have the spotlight, like do this and that. And I'm like, but I don't want to. Like, you know, I was scared of the attention.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, did it feel unsafe?
It did. It definitely did. Yeah. I mean, I was walking my dog on the Strand and TMZ, I could see, all of a sudden I was like, out of the corner of my eye, I was like, is that like a telephoto lens over there? Like I saw a guy like way down the street with a lens on me. And I looked and I'm like, maybe he's taking a picture of one of the properties. Yeah. You know, because there's beautiful big houses everywhere in Hermosa. Right. So
looking on the right side there,
right?
But your intuition was telling you different.
So this, I check back again, and now he's in my face, and he has a video camera, and he made it from like far away to me doing a double take. He's right next to me, and he's in my face with the camera, and they didn't blur out my address at the time. I don't live there anymore, but I freaked out because I contacted my agent. I'm like, you got to tell them to take that down or blur out the address or whatever, and you know,
and you have little kids.
I do. I have little kids. And it's not like I lived in like a building with a gate and a code and everything. It was like, you know, we lived right there, like very close to the beach and lots of people all over the place. So it made me feel really unsafe. That's what happened. And their excuse was, well, you know, she should have responded to us when we reached out for questions. I'm like
what do I owe
chase
you?
me into my house.
Yeah.
And it was funny because my husband, the second I came in and told him what happened, he starts putting his shoes on. He's like, I'm going to go out there. I'm like, that's what they want. Yeah. Don't go out there. Yeah. That's exactly what they want. They want like the Peloton's crazy real husband to come out like yelling.
Keep the story going.
Oh, he was like, oh my
chapter
God.
2.
It, like instantly, it was like a light switch. He realized like, oh my God, you're right. I'm like, yes, that's what they're here for. They're here to catch me saying something controversial or to catch you saying get away.
No, and
you know.
I have to say that Today Show interview that you did, which you just told me that was the only one that you ended up granting. One, you were so like you accepted so much responsibility for, like you said, like with my face. I'm like, I mean, and like you said, there were two camps, but like your self-regulation and then accepting that responsibility, like you're taking on a lot there.
Well, you know. Part of me was like, okay, where did this start from? It started from this expression that they used. So they did like 1,000 takes, right? And they're like, say it this way, now say it this way, now say it this way. That's the one they went with. And that expression made everybody go, why is she scared and nervous to get on this bike in her house with no audience? And it's like everybody knows what that. I've heard it a million times since then. I'm nervous but excited.
Yeah.
And at the time, everyone was picking that apart. Like, why does she look nervous and excited? So I'm like, well, what it really boiled down to was everyone took notice because of the expression that everyone started talking about. Then everyone started adding to it. Yeah. Oh, but what else is problematic about this? What else can we take?
And the basic controversy came down to the fact that you were already in shape and like a beautiful woman, and that there was somehow a controversy.
Why would someone who's already in shape want to exercise? And whose husband buys like a large piece of equipment like that without having any idea whether or not their wife would want it?
Right?
It's really unlikely,
it's an investment, I think. And there would be, So I landed in the camp of like, no, exercise comes from, it creates its own transformation that is largely outside of your body, right? Right. So that feeling that like, I don't identify with the other side.
Well, I had a friend in college who dated someone after college who like was like, let's get in shape together. And he kind of masked it as like a team effort, but really he wanted her to lose weight. And so he would take her measurements and do all this stuff. So that dawned on me when people started saying like, this is triggering for this reason. And I thought, you know what? I can't be insensitive to the people that took it that way, because even though it was never meant to be that way. Right. I mean, the Peloton community all felt like this is kind of like my story. This is really how it goes, you know?
Yeah.
But anyone who didn't have one didn't see it that way. And
Right.
what I think the problem was that the commercial was made for people that already had them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like it related
for
to
sure.
the people that related to that
It was
story in that
inspiring
commercial.
them.
It
And
inspired
how
the
many
people that already
people-
have a bike.
Right, and how many people through COVID came through with that story?
Yes.
Right? I mean, we were all working out on our own or with our families.
Yes.
So, yeah.
So I mean, they ended up winning in that regard because I always was confused about the whole Peloton thing because I'd never seen a commercial that explained, you know, their live classes and all this stuff. So I didn't really know what it was either. Even when we did the commercial, I was on a bike that was not powered on. So I'm riding a bike. I mean, the resistance works, but it wasn't powered on. So I'd never even seen the thing turned
You weren't
on.
attached to that community.
Right.
And those are the two things that came to me. I'm like, for me, exercise is one, the community that I'm working out with, and two, the endorphins that I get to manage the rest of my day.
Right. And that's what that bike gave people during the pandemic because they sent me one after I blamed it on my face. I was like, boom, I got a bike. They said, right after the interview, they called my agent and were like, we want to send Monica a bike. And I was like, yes. Blaming it on my eyebrows really earned me a bike. So,
That's awesome.
But I got to experience that sense of community because there's people there live riding with you and high-fiving you. And like, that's what I missed so much when they closed all the gyms and stuff.
Totally.
Was being held accountable by the person that's next to me, even if that person is virtually, you know, next to me.
Yeah, leaderboard.
There's that accountability,
and all that.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that a lot of people were.
So, Jay, do you want to pull up this? Then when you went on the Today Show, I'm like, wait, how does Ryan Reynolds relate to any of this?
Oh, yes.
So,
is this it right now?
this is the commercial that came after the Peloton.
Oh,
So,
man.
Ryan, so how did...
So everything blew up in that week.
Yeah.
And the next day, my agent calls me and she goes, have you heard of Aviation Gin? And I'm like, yeah. I thought she said Aviation Gym.
Yeah,
like
amen.
local,
Yeah.
like a local
That's where
aviation
our
gym.
kids play
They're like, they
volleyball.
want to do They're like, they want to do a commercial, and I'm like, what do they want? What? And she goes, usually their commercials are really funny, and I'm like, I've never seen a commercial for Aviation Gym before. And she was like, you haven't? Like, where have you been? I'm like, no, I just haven't. Then I realized later, oh my God, Gin. And it's Ryan Reynolds, and he has all of these really funny commercials. So then I was like, okay. And they came to me with their idea of what they wanted me to do. And to me, it felt like the guy that played the husband in the commercial was going to get his feelings hurt with the like original idea that they had. It was kind of more ragging on him. And he had already been making his rounds, having fun, doing all of the interviews. And I didn't want him to feel like now we were going to be pitted against each other because he was kind of taking a lot of heat. Like online, everyone was like going after him and everyone was coming to me and being like, either I hate your eyebrows or this is my story. I totally agree. But he was getting like so much hate because he was the husband that bought it in the commercial. And I didn't want to add to any of the negativity that he was experiencing by doing something that I felt like might be interpreted as making more fun of him and his character or whatever. So I actually reached out to him and I was like, listen, this is the proposal for this commercial and we're going to joke about the whole thing, but I want you to know about it before we do it. And he was like, have fun, go do it. I'm having fun. Let's just have fun with this and I'm like, okay, I'm not going to like let this be a surprise for you. Because they literally wanted to shoot it like in a 24-hour turnaround. Oh, wow. So we had to go shoot it like the next day at 5 a.m. My agent was there on set saying like, because we were ad-libbing and we were just, you know, improvising jokes, and the girls that were on either side of me were hilarious. So I was playing off of them. But there were things that they asked me to say that my agent was like, no, she's not going to say that. Because it was like maybe a little vulgar. And it was an internet commercial, so you can go a little further with that.
Okay.
But, you know, we were kind of careful about it. I was worried, to be honest, about how it was going to come off. It ended up working out great. It ended up being received as like, okay, like let's all stop taking this so seriously. Right. Yeah. That's exactly what they proposed it as. And I was still really, really nervous. I'm like, can Peloton like sue me for this? Like, what am I going to do? My friend who's a lawyer and his dad is a professor at a law school. Like they both consulted with me on the contract and everything. And I'm like, am I going to be held
this
responsible?
This is the world of making commercials. These are not like...
I know, but you're always worried. You're always worried about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But so we shot it quickly. And then he reached out to me and was like, I have to go on the show to talk about my movie that's coming out. And I know that it's really not your thing. Like he was like, I know it's not your thing because I hadn't done any interviews yet. And he's like, but if you come, I promise that like it's not going to be uncomfortable. They're not going to press you to like try to say anything.
Okay.
You know, and they keep it light, especially with him. And I'm like, that'll be good because they'll be more focused on him.
Yeah, it's true.
And I'll finally get to just say what I want to say.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's why I was like, okay, I'll do it.
Was that the interview from Entertainment Tonight? Was that the ET one? Because that's the one I pulled up right now.
Oh no.
That one was that. Okay, so that was the one. They totally got me on that one. So I was on The Bold and the Beautiful for like 20 episodes. And I was in hair and makeup there on set for my first day of shooting. And they were like, can we do like a quick interview with you? And it was all of a sudden, it was like, what was that, Access Hollywood or Entertainment Tonight? I can't remember.
It says Entertainment Tonight.
Right.
Yeah.
So they came over to me
Canada.
and he was trying his darndest to get me to say something. And when they were done with the interview, he was like, you're good at this. Because he could tell. He was like, I really want to catch you saying something controversial or choosing a side or whatever. But I was just like, I'm going to keep it light and bright. And my agent was so mad about that. She's like, they did not mention that was going to happen. Like I should have been there.
Tried to trap you.
But you know, that's what happens. You know, it was all part of like the promotional side of the show. Like Bold and the Beautiful, they like to grab people that are in the spotlight and have them do a guest spot. My role ended up going a little bit further than just that 1 or 2 episodes. But yeah.
So Aviation Gin commercial. Like if you, that's
Aviation Gin.
Gin.
G-I-N.
Oh.
Yeah.
Gin.
Like the
But you know, there were
martini.
also people that were really pissed about that too. Like, oh, they're showing that like binge drinking is a way to like take care of your problems. And I'm like, but I know that some people are triggered by that. But in general, we're really just joking
What are we
around.
gonna put out at any point these days that doesn't trigger somebody?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And to take it back to the mindfulness, like we were talking about how we met, right? Like you're saying I need to learn to slow down and slow down my mind. Clearly you already had that skill set because you've already managed a lot of pressure and you're not taking the bait. You are responding, not reacting.
Yeah,
So you've had a lot of training there.
I'm also
already.
like a natural mediator, like in my
Yeah.
family. Like I like when people try to keep the peace. If someone is really aggressive or confrontational, I step back. So that's how it felt to me. It felt like there was this like aggressive like draw toward me, you know, on just mostly online and toward my agents and stuff to get me to say something. And I was like, everyone just wants to.
Yes.
Yes.
That's
That's
it.
it.
That's it.
Let's play it, guys.
Okay.
Let's have a little fun here, okay?
This gin is really smooth.
Yeah. We can get you another one if you like. You're safe here.
To new beginnings.
To new beginnings. There you go. It's gonna be a fun night.
It's a good base.
There you go. Take this too.
Really?
You look great, by the way.
Oh, there's so many funny takes of that commercial.
And that's the way you just pop the bubble.
I mean, with the help of Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah,
So, I mean,
which
I can't.
doesn't hurt.
But I remember I was like dropping my son off at preschool, and Ryan Reynolds is calling my cell phone to convince me to trust them because I was so scared of pissing everybody off, doing the wrong thing, making fun of people. I'm not a person that like makes fun of people. And I was so worried that that's what the goal was.
Yeah.
And it really wasn't. That wasn't
No.
their goal, but you know, they couldn't
And there's
explain that to
something
me that
keeping
clearly.
things light these days, but
Right.
it's really hard to do.
It's hard to
in
make
the
a joke and
context of
lighten it.
the
Yes.
world we're living in right now.
Right. Exactly.
And so, but leading with kindness, which is, again, like when I sat down with you the first time, I'm like, that's always the vibe. Like that vibe of leading with kindness, and that kind of brings us to how we really met, is we have kids and the whole group of mindful moms that I was leading, where, you know, all of us have a child that's not even struggling, like developmentally challenged in some way or struggling. My youngest is on the autism spectrum. You have a 5 and 3 year old.
Yep.
And your
My 5-year-old,
Right.
he's almost 6 pretty soon. Yeah, he's on the spectrum as well. And he has like this very rare gene deletion that causes all of these delays. And I remember when the neurologist was like, oh, we found out why. We figured it out. And I'm like, but that doesn't really change anything. I mean, it doesn't,
No.
it really doesn't it can open up a few, doors for specialists that might give us a little bit of insight into what we might expect down the road. But in his particular case, they've only studied it in 50 people in the world. So it really
50 people.
Yeah, 50 people. So it's like, he was like, you need to join Facebook again and just find this group of people that have this specific deletion. The group has grown to like, I think 81 people. And those are probably, family members and caregivers as well. So I don't know that there's that many more people that have been, but how many people in their life have had a genetic test done to see if they have a deletion or that they carry something that they don't realize they carry. So it's probably many, many more than that. But as of right now, it's only been studied in 50 people. So, it's nice that they know, okay, he may need this kind of screening every year or two. So we get all these different screens done at UCLA, and they'll do, an MRI, and they'll do an echocardiogram, and they'll check,
And as a parent, having access to those types of things.
Exactly.
That's the peace of mind that comes with it is huge.
And people are so afraid of the diagnosis, but I always want to tell them, like, this opens doors. This creates this new community of helpers. Like, these are hands reaching out going, you don't have to do this, but I'm here to help you or guide you if you do.
Right.
And so that's what I always try to tell people is like, don't be afraid of that. It's still your same kid. It's still your kid.
Yeah.
Nothing changes.
Changed. I know, for sure.
Just the way that the world is going to come together and the way that you're going to be able to explain your child to people that are going to be with them when you're not.
Right.
Whether it's a coach or a teacher, Now they have a little bit more insight and they might actually be a little bit more patient with them.
Absolutely. And everybody in the end just wants to feel understood with wherever they're coming in, right? So any kid going into a classroom, but as it's often I've found like when Matthew was little, it was harder for me to kind of know how to. You go through that whole period of like, are you like you're scared, and then maybe you're a little bit you're sad because it looks. And see, for mine, it was the fourth. For you, it was the firstborn,
right?
And it's. Kind of coming to terms with what it looks like versus what you thought it was going to look like. But really in the end, and now getting 14 years down the road, we never really know what anything's going to look like.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So
there's a poem actually, I don't know if you've read it, and it's about that. It's about how, I've always wanted to go to Italy, and I've had this dream of going to Italy, and I get my tickets and I get on the plane, and the plane lands in Amsterdam. And I'm like, this isn't where I planned to go. This was not I bought tickets to Italy. You know what I mean? And it's the most amazing poem because it's so true. It's like, well, now I get to go to a place that I didn't expect to go and meet people I didn't expect to meet.
Yeah.
And learn things that I didn't expect to learn. And so you have to look at it in a different way.
Beautiful.
And I love that. I got to find the name of that poem and I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
Someone sent it to me and I'm like, everything makes me cry now. I'm like, oh my God. There was like 2 years where I didn't cry. I'm like, I don't cry.
Yeah.
And now everything.
Okay. 2 years. So when were the 2 years that you didn't cry?
After college. My parents got a divorce, and I just remember like losing all interest and hope in relationships. And I thought like eventually everyone gets divorced. Eventually things don't work out. People lie to each other. It was all this stuff that you just get so jaded. It happens so fast and you don't realize it. And I just remember like nothing really like moved me. I remember being sensitive to people and tried to be empathetic and stuff, but I just didn't. I mean, now you could show me like baby animals and I'd be like, pouring tears.
So the divorce caught you off guard?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Out of nowhere?
I mean, sort of. Okay. So I moved back home like a lot of kids do after college. I'm going to move back home just for a little bit and then get my bearings and then I'll go get my own place. And they were kind of in the process of separating when I moved home. I could tell. Yeah. I could tell. And I knew something was going on. And I remember there were even days where I'd be like, I want to follow my dad and see what he's up to. And it's like, that is so, like, you're going to go follow your dad to like just get rid of this feeling that there's a distance between them. Yeah. So, they did eventually end up getting a divorce and my dad got remarried like pretty quickly. Oh. And so it was just very, it was one of those things where, me and my sisters all sided with our mom and you just get kind of jaded, and it takes a little while and it takes the right person that makes you that brings you back to who you are. Yeah. Like when I met my husband and I started dating him, my mom's like, you're yourself. Like
what a beautiful thing.
Right.
Yeah. Now I have a flip story. I was married for 20 years and
20 years. That's a long time.
Yeah, 4 kids, 20 years. And I had a friend that I met in the volleyball gym, and we would sit and talk during the kids' games. And I was always on my own. And then I was like, hey, like, we should all have dinner. And so the 4 of us met up for dinner one night. And she said to me, like, the dinner, it felt like not how it felt when she and I would just sit and chat in the gym. And so I remember like, oh, dinner didn't last as long as I would have liked. That didn't feel like social to the way I like to feel. And then the next week, just the friend and I go for a walk again. And she said, I don't know who that Wendy was. Like, that's not the Wendy I've known. And it was such an eye-opening moment for me that it's true. You either meet people that bring, and I don't have any, like, I don't wish anybody any ill will. I want everybody to thrive. I want my kids to have the best relationship with their dad that they can. But it is so key that you lock arms with someone that brings the biggest and best out of you.
Yeah.
And it happens for so many psychological reasons why people end up together. And yes, I think there are lessons you learn in every relationship, but that's huge to have your mom say, you're yourself.
Yeah. Because I hadn't been. I kept choosing people that I knew what was going to happen. You know what I mean? I chose the people that I already knew. I know this will come to an end. So that keeps me in control, and that keeps my walls up, and that keeps me preventing any pain. And even though there were moments in those relationships where I felt like I was struggling with that, like, oh wait, actually maybe I do kind of like this person, but I still know it's going to end. That kind of thing. It's like I chose the wrong people on purpose. I think a lot of people do that either subconsciously or consciously, like,
and so much of it like comes from our past stories, right? I mean, I talk about this, like, these patterns of generational learning and healing, and so much of it comes from what we're willing to look at, right? I mean, are we willing to look at that story of where we've come from and see? I mean, even listening to you talk about this, like, you being conscious that you were choosing that type of relationship.
Yeah.
Like,
and I remember
huge.
like looking at the person that I was dating and knowing that they were lying and just letting them get away with it, because I was like, well, I don't care. Do whatever you want. This is going to end eventually. We're just having fun. Like, you know what I mean? And I look back on those people in particular, and I think, like, man, they thought they were slick. Yeah. They thought like, they were slick, and I knew everything. I probably know more than they would ever even imagine about what they were doing and thought they were getting away with.
You're like, I just didn't have the energy to
let you get
call
away
it.
with it because I didn't care. You know what I mean? Like,
wow.
But I also, in the end, like, you think you're in all this control, and you think because you know all this stuff that you're not going to get hurt, and you get hurt anyway. You still get hurt.
I know.
You still get hurt because you're a human being, and you lie to yourself about whether or not you care. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Yeah.
You do care deep down.
Of course you care, because you're like, this person doesn't respect me.
Yeah.
So,
how old were you when you met your husband?
26, I guess.
Okay.
Something like that.
And then how long did you date before you got married?
3 years, I think it was.
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah.
So a healthy amount of time, but not like a really long time.
Yeah, no, not like a really long time, because I guess.
And could you feel that shift? Like when you met him, could you tell it was different than these other relationships?
Right away.
Yeah.
Right away. It was like one of those cheesy, like all of a sudden this person's in focus and the other people are not. And it's like, what's going on? Like, I was literally walking into the bar that he managed with my resume and was like, do you guys need any servers? Because I was like serving at a sushi restaurant up the street that didn't like give me enough shifts, and I need more shifts. And so I like walked in, and like he like took my resume, and I remember just being like, oh, this isn't gonna work. Like, I can't like have a crush on my boss.
Like right off the bat.
And so so I worked there for maybe 5 months, and the whole time that I was working there, I had a huge crush on him. I never said anything to anyone. He had a girlfriend at the time. His relationship he was in was really unhealthy. I didn't even know they were dating, because I was like, I can't believe she talks to her boss like that. Little did I know it was like her boyfriend.
Oh gosh.
Because she worked there too. But I left, and I traveled in Europe with my sister for a couple of months, because this was like the year after I graduated college. And when I came back, I didn't want to go back to work there because I was a cocktail waitress there and the job was just way too hard for me. I didn't like people touching me and like putting their arms around me a lot, you know? So I didn't like the job for that reason. So I just went back to the sushi restaurant and one of the
more reserved.
Right. One of the other managers came in and he sees me and he goes, "You're back? I thought you were coming back to work for us when you got back in town." And I was like, I don't want to work there anymore.
Yeah.
So then they invited me to come back as a bartender.
Okay.
And I was like, okay, I can do that because there's there's protection.
Yeah.
And also if someone's not being nice to you, you can be like, "I'm not serving you," and walk away. It's the best thing ever.
Oh,
Whereas if you're serving at a table and someone's sitting at your table, then man, you got to put up with it.
You don't have an out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like unless they're being ejected from the building, you really can't avoid them.
So then he was still there when you went back to bartend.
When I went back, he was there and they had broken up. So then I was like, okay, now I get my opportunity and I just got to get some courage to say something. Eventually I got the courage to say something and then it just like
So you had the
happened.
first words.
So yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I don't know what he would say.
Yeah.
Because we were both feeling the same way,
Okay.
but we just neither one of us had ever said anything.
Okay.
You know? So when it was finally out in the open, it just happened really fast and we were, you know.
Yeah.
It was just easy, very easy. 100% myself with this person, you know? So it's like, I don't know. And I always tell people, you got to find someone that's like your friend, someone you actually want to hang out with.
So true.
Yeah.
It is so true.
Like, can you stay home and do a puzzle with this person? Or are you like very eager to get out and like.
Does it always have to be a big event?
Yeah.
And coming from where you come from, I mean, obviously, like the Hollywood thing and the pull of, I mean.
That's always the fear too, is that like this person that I'm dating is going to be threatened by it. Mm-hmm. And he was always like, awesome, cool. He moved out here because he was on a reality show called The Real Gilligan's Island.
Oh, no way.
And so he worked on a boat. He's from Boston. He was working on a boat and they were scouting. They wanted real Gilligans. So they wanted to find real people they needed like real movie stars, real millionaires.
Yeah.
They were actually looking for people that really held that position in life. So they find this like gangly guy. He's like 6'2", like, you know, and they asked him like, have you ever made any mistakes? He was like, oh yeah. And he starts telling him about all these things that he's done. And they're like, well, we have this show. It's kind of like Survivor and you can win $100,000. And he was like 19 or 20 when they approached him. So he was like, yeah, I'll do it. So he ended up doing that. And he had to come out here for all the like press and stuff. And then decided to move out here to kind of work in the industry just on the other side of the camera.
Oh, okay.
So he's aware. He wasn't thinking that it's all like this glamorous thing.
Yeah.
So he was more aware of the industry, which I think helped a lot for him.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
So your background isn't actually in acting though, right? I mean, like you kind of stumbled into it because what was your degree in college?
Sociology. I got my degree in sociology. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to do multiple subject. And I came home and I'm like, okay, I'm going to do the CBEST test so I can be a sub. And then I'll do my credential if I know that I want to do this or that. And as I was getting into it and as I was talking to more and more people who were teachers already, I was starting to realize that it wasn't exactly what I thought I wanted to do. Yeah. So I was like, okay, how am I going to pay off my debt from college? Like, how am I going to pay off my like credit card debt and the stuff that I accumulated while I was in school? And so both my sisters were like, why don't you just go to some open calls at some modeling agencies and see if anybody thinks that you could work? And I'm like, okay. And I was always so like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, that's so like, ugh. Like,
so how do you think you got your confidence and your like true self to come through when you were feeling like that, going to those calls?
You know, I think having gone to school played a huge role in it. Like if I would have tried to do that right out of high school, I think I would have been eaten alive. But because I was in school and I had this opportunity to be out of my house, living on my own, figuring out relationships with other people, how to live with new people and compromise and all that stuff, I gained this other sense of self, like this new kind of confidence in my own decisions, who I thought I was in different scenarios, traveling a little bit.
Yeah.
Realizing how you feel about people and when you're wrong and when you're right, all those things, you know?
Learning to trust your gut.
Right.
Yeah.
So I always felt like I had this confidence that came from that time of my life, those 4 years of building that.
I have said that so many times.
Yeah.
Like, isn't it crazy to get to, I mean, I'm 47, but like I look at those 4 years and as in the scheme of your life, it is like flash in the pan.
Right.
But they're so foundational.
And I always tell people, even if you don't need a degree to do what you want to do, it's a really good thing to still do.
Yeah.
Like it really, really is. You learn so many things about yourself. And I'm sure not everybody has that experience, of course.
Right.
But in general, I think giving it at least a year or two, moving away and having roommates or living in a dorm or whatever it is that forces you to like experience something.
And it's like forced with safety, right?
Right.
I always tell my kids, I'm like, literally the best years of your life. Like, not that, and I will say parenting's been the greatest journey of my life, but to be let out and know that, like, they're still there. Like, your family,
Right.
Somebody's kind of there to catch you, but you got all this freedom, right? And you're figuring out how to use it and figuring out your schedule on your own and figuring out if you're a morning person or a night person or how you get things done or, when your energy is the best or all of that stuff.
Exactly.
Because that's what trains you for all this other stuff, right?
And I remember I would go to all of these different jobs, or I'd go to castings and I'd meet other models, and they were all just like, "Oh, you went to college? Oh, so you have something to fall back on." Because like a lot of girls that model, they know that it's short-lived.
Yeah.
So the natural progression for most models in Los Angeles is to start going to commercial auditions.
Okay.
Because now you're not necessarily having to be like the right size or the right age or the right whatever. I mean, things have opened up dramatically for people of all different, looks and everything now, which is amazing. But back then it was like, you have to be between 5'8" and 5'10", and you need to be these measurements and you need to be this size to fit our samples. And that's it. And that's how you work. And in New York, it's worse. I would have never made it in New York ever. But here in LA, commercially, I started to realize like, this is so much fun. I get to have fun and I get to be myself, and I don't have to try to look serious and sexy, because that never worked. They'd always be like, "You're still smiling." I'm like, "I'm not." Just my eyes were always, I guess, smizing or smiling or whatever. But so it kind of like started that way. It was like it went from modeling to, oh, now you to audition for commercials. Now you should take some acting classes and get a little more serious about it. And now you have all of these different opportunities, and you start building up your experience, and now you can go find yourself an agent. Now I have a manager. So it's like it happens in stages depending on how you're going about it. But that's kind of how it happened for me. And I always, as a kid, would watch other people performing and just sit there and go, how do they do that? I wish I could get up there and not care what everyone's thinking.
Yeah.
That's always been the biggest thing for me, is worried about people not liking me.
Oh my gosh. Is that not a huge something? I don't know at what point. I mean, it was in my 40s. I've worked through that one.
I'm still waiting.
In my 40s.
Still waiting. I'm like, if someone says, if I heard someone say, I don't like her, I'd be like, what did I do? What did I say? What did I?
Yeah.
I want to be like, I don't care.
Right.
Because everything I say, I own. You know what I mean? I wish I could just be that.
I know.
But it's
But you know who you are. It
Mm-hmm.
comes through. And that, to me, like the foundation of being like, learning how to flip that script and be like, I know who I am. I know how to consistently show up as who I am. So I guess not everybody's meant to like me.
Right.
And the other thing that comes through there is like, you never know what's going on in someone's story. So, right. So you get judged
biggest.
and you're like, hey, that guy did not know what my morning looked
Right.
like. So if I had that moment in my head, I'm like, well, cut yourself some slack. And even the fact that I started this podcast, I'm like, to treat our stories with more grace than the first time that we went through them. Because how often is like, life is less than perfect.
Right.
Right. So how do you come through those things and like learn the lesson and then have the moment to reflect and say, well, that's what I learned. So next time, maybe I'll do it this way, or I'll take that little piece of information.
Even small things throughout the day. There are times when I'm just so relaxed in the car and someone like zips around me and is like angry. And I'm like, I've been you more than I've been me right now. Like I've been the like driver that's running late, that's everyone's going too slow and everyone's an idiot. You know what I mean? Like I've been that person. So I know. And it's just like, I have to constantly remind myself, like, you've been that person to somebody else who was,
in that moment,
either nervous or just relaxed and like, go ahead, go around me. I'm not in a rush kind of thing. It's just all of these little tiny things. And then I always tell my friends too, who have experiences with people initially where they're like, I could just feel that they didn't like me right away. I'm like, maybe you look like someone they don't like.
Yeah.
Maybe you remind them of someone they had a really bad experience with.
Yeah.
It's not about you.
Names can be triggering. Looks can be triggering.
Right. When you're
like,
thinking of names for your kids.
Yes.
Oh my God. The funniest conversations are the ones had between the parents.
Yeah, you're like,
going, what about this name? And everyone's like, ugh. Like, you're like people.
So my third grade
No
teacher was so
way.
mean. Like,
It's so
yeah,
funny.
totally.
It's so funny that the things that people feel about names when it's like you are going to name your child.
So your boys' names are?
Miles and Michael. So we went with Miles because that was my husband's like favorite boy name.
I love it.
And then we put his middle name as my husband's brother, Brendan, because he's just like the Buddha of the family. Like we think of him as like the calm, like we're like, let's name him after like who's going to be his favorite person, you know? So he's Miles Brendan. And then Michael is both of the grandfathers. So he's Michael Robert. He sounds like an author.
Yeah. Someone was just asking me yesterday about how you name your kids, and I said the first two were like really easy, and then the second two I feel like were much more difficult, and the first two helped name the second two because
Yes. My mom named her sister when she was like, I don't know, 7 or whatever, and her sister was born. She got to name her. Like, her mom was like, you name her.
Yeah, Matthew's middle name is Thomas because Luke was obsessed with Thomas the Train.
Oh, that's so
little
cute.
face. Oh, Thomas. I'm like, oh,
That's so
okay.
cute.
So
I mean, it could have been Elmo.
I know, right? I might have probably vetoed that, but so I'm taking it back to having that sensitivity and then having a child that's highly sensitive. And is there like a through line there that you've learned having him for what, 5, almost 6 years now?
Yeah.
And what was that journey like in the beginning? Like, did you know that something
I
was different
had suspicions.
as your firstborn?
I would be scrolling on my phone at night for autism red flags. All of the articles that were talked about, like, what are some red flags for autism? And I remember he was always a sometimes and a never and you know what I mean? It was never like, yes, 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 yes. It was never like a check in every box. And I was always asking other people, like, you know, he hasn't really been doing this or that. He doesn't really do that. And I would see my niece who was 3 days younger than him. She was born 3 days later.
Oh, wow.
So that's even harder too, because boys and girls are very different in that way usually. And so I'm watching her and I'm like, he doesn't do that. And, you know, I'd watch other kids and I'd get really nervous. And, but I always knew something was different and I wasn't sure what. And everyone around us was like, don't worry about it. He's fine. He's going to be like, don't worry. Yeah. And everyone, I don't think so. I would be surprised if. I would never think this. And so when the first person that said the word autism to me said it in a very cold way, it was this woman at the regional center and she was just like this, I don't know if she was German or whatever, but it was like the accent sounded very, you know, kind of harsh and stern. Yeah. And she was like, has anyone ever mentioned autism to you? Just like that. And I was like, oh. Because it was like, this was like my fear that everyone said, no. But I didn't know anything about autism. Right. I didn't know anybody who identifies or said that they were autistic. I had not met anybody. Yeah. It's just not that talked about. It's more
and
now,
nobody knows how broad that spectrum is.
It could just be I am really uncomfortable socially, which it used to be Asperger's and they don't say that anymore. Right. To like, I'm nonverbal and I communicate with a device. Yeah. You know, it's like there's so many people in the middle of those. Yeah. So. And
whether you're focusing or you're struggling socially or with focus or with textures or with food, like.
And it changes. Exactly. It changes. Yeah. You know,
or sensory stuff. I mean, Matthew's, my first tip, his ears were super, super sensitive. But I have super sensitive ears. Right. And I had the same experience where people were like, no, look, he looks back and checks in with you. So he's not on the spectrum. Like one thing.
Right. And no, he makes so much eye contact, though he couldn't be.
And it's like, there's not a checklist where, and any of us check all the boxes on anything, by the way. Right. I mean, but that is.
I mean, and the pediatricians, they're doing their due diligence with their early screening. Yeah. You know, because you know, we know now that early intervention is huge, huge. So I always tell people, like, if you're even a little bit concerned, don't be afraid of
because what
occupational therapy or speech therapy. They're just playing. They're playing. Yeah. They're not hooking them up to machines and stuff. Yeah. Like they just, you know, take advantage of this really small window of time when
they're make the neuroplasticity of the first 5 years. I remember feeling like this door's closing. Yeah. But then the cool thing about it now, and the more they keep learning about neuroscience in the brain is the neuroplasticity. Whereas I swear when Matthew was little, it was like, oh, it only changes the first 5 years. Now it's like, oh no, our brains keep changing.
Thank
now
God.
we have to do different things for our brains to keep changing, but different than the first 5 years. But it's such a freeing feeling to be like, that's where that growth mindset comes in, because you're just like, we can always change.
Right.
And we're not in control of a lot of the things that happen to us, but we are in control of our own narrative, right? What we're telling ourselves, how we talk to ourselves.
Yes.
And I don't care if you're on the spectrum or not, like working with that. And it is, at least my experience, harder with the black and white thinking to create that narrative that is a little more graceful, is a little more kind to yourself.
Right.
Like I notice Matthew's super empathetic. Like, and they'll say, oh, well, they don't read. I'm like, he reads more emotions than less.
Right.
Right. And then the old stereotype was like, oh, well, they can't read emotions. They can't.
They're not emotional. They don't like affection. You know what I mean?
There's just so many things that are myths.
Yeah.
That came through from like one story from, and I loved Dustin Hoffman and Tom Cruise and Rain Man, but that is one story, right? And that was the only.
And everyone thinks they're going to be just this genius that can do.
Oh, and that's the other one.
Mathematical.
I know, and it's like.
For me, with a little one, it's like all I want him to do right now is figure out a way to calm his body down so he can attend, because that is our biggest thing right now. And then the occupational therapist is shedding so much light on it for me, because if you talk to a behavior therapist, they think everything's behavior.
Right.
Occupational therapist is like, there's a lot going on in his body right now.
The
like,
physiology.
He just had a growth spurt. His body, he can't perceive his body. So he's literally jumping from the highest point in any area and slamming his body down for
just
fun.
To receive the input.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I have to let other people know, like, he's out of whack right now because he had a growth spurt and this is going to last for a little while. And I've seen it happen before and it'll happen again. But it's just, you have this feeling of responsibility to all of the people, like teachers and therapists and stuff, for them to know that you're also trying really hard too. You're on the team too, that you're not just sending them to school to give yourself a break.
Yeah.
You're hoping that you can send him with tools that will help. And I'm always emailing the teacher, and I'm always asking after school, like, how did it go today? What do we need to work? What are some things? Trying to shed some light, asking other people, because it's a group effort. And
it is.
And I still have this major sense of responsibility as like the person who, I don't know, like it's like this old way of thinking where if like a kid is acting up, like the parents aren't good parents.
Oh gosh, I know.
You know, you can't help it.
No,
you can't help it.
Can't. And yet you are the coordinator of all of it, right? You're like in the middle, and all of these caregivers go off and they make such a huge difference.
Yeah.
And I remember really shifting my focus, like when Matthew was in preschool and being the youngest of 4, right? So he's coming in, and then all of a sudden he doesn't quite follow the way that the other 3 have gone through this preschool. And I didn't really have words for it at that point. Mm-hmm. So I remember that, like, I remember shrinking back. And then we moved down here when he started kindergarten, and shifting my own thought. And I remember walking up to the kindergarten teacher and saying, you and I are going to be really good friends. And it was like the freeing feeling that I had when I started the conversation like that, on a friendly, like, rather than waiting for someone to come to you and say, do you know that, like, right?
Show that you're interested, show that you want to be involved on as many levels as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Because then the teachers know that you're working with them, and then they have so much more patience with the child. If the parent is never communicating, or they're never really seeing them, and they're, they just assume that no one's working with them, or no one's trying to help the situation or anything like that, so I think it's so important, like you said, to right out of the gate say, we're gonna
so you got him into, so he did speech and OT from
he started speech like right around 2, because he was delayed, and we went to the regional center and they were like, he's not quite delayed enough for us to provide services. So I went back to the pediatrician. He was like, absolutely needs speech therapy. I'm gonna write you a prescription, find a speech therapist. So we took him to a place that actually had occupational therapy going on at the same time, and she approached me and said, he needs OT. And I'm like, what is OT? You know, like I
Yeah,
have
I
no
know.
idea what that is.
Yeah.
What are you guys doing? Like for the first, like, I want to say 6 months, I'm like looking at my husband, like, what are they doing?
Yeah.
Like, what
Why
are they?
am I here?
No one's explaining anything. And then she started to really explain to me everything that they were doing and what they were trying to get him to do and what they were trying to do because they could tell his body needed certain things and all this stuff. And then it became like one of our most major focuses
Yeah.
in terms of, you know, how can we get him through the school day? I talk to the OT more than anyone else.
Yeah.
You know, because it's his body that's dysregulated most of the time.
Yeah.
So,
So, and
yeah,
then,
and then we were there, and then the regional center checked in with us again 6 months later, and we're like, he's still just, you know, delayed just enough for us to not need to provide services. And I'm like, is there anyone else that can observe him at daycare? Is there anyone else? Like, is this the end all? You guys are the final decision? And they said, well, you know, a psychologist can go observe him at school or, you know, at the playground or whatever, but you're probably not going to get much from them because they're probably going to sort of come to the same conclusions that we did. And I said, okay, but I still want to do it.
Okay.
And so we did it, and she right away, she was like, that she was the one that said, has anyone, but she ended up being very helpful. She wrote a letter on our behalf to the regional center complaining that he should not have slipped through the way that he did. She was really adamant that we needed to like complain. But the regional center has been incredibly helpful for us. I have been really, but it was just those early days of trying to get support. But you know, their funds are limited.
right. And their caseload's probably really high.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they got to give help to the kids that really, 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 really obviously need
Yeah.
it. And so these other kids that are kind of on the
Right.
edge.
And being a persistent parent and having whatever bandwidth it does take, because there are parents out there, like I've always been very grateful for having the time and the resources to get what I mean, if there's anything I'm grateful for, like I can forgo a trip, I can forgo a lot of things, but if I, you know, to be able to like push through and get that speech therapy early before he could
it is
qualify.
a full-time job.
Yeah.
It's a full-time job just setting up and arguing with insurance and trying to get things, you know,
so
approved
stressful.
and everything. And I'm like, what do people do who work a 9-to-5 job, who can't call during business hours, who can't contact the East Coast during their business hours? You know, like I think of all these parents whose English is a second language. There's all of these people out there with no support, and people are saying just to push their kids through, they're fine, they'll be fine. And they're just taking it as like, okay, if you say so.
And then you're just living with this chronic level of stress that keeps rising as the child gets older and become right. I mean, the child's getting older, the parents are dealing with more and more stress, and it's a recipe. And knowing what we know about autism and it being a nervous system imbalance, like providing, like my highest and best use has just been like, can I just provide a home that's calm and stable? Because
oh my
the
God, you're
difference,
home. I was like, you can't pull me out of here. Just
thank
sitting
you.
in that
It's
chair
like
for hours on end.
I do love, I mean, I'm from everything from essential oils to whatever, like the pillows to this, I just love, like that is, and I realized it's what my body craved too.
Yeah.
So everything that I learned as I started to learn about him, I didn't care about high school biology. I have never been a scientist in my life, but when that stuff started relating to my kid, it became super interesting.
Right.
Right?
Isn't that funny all of a sudden?
Oh, that's why mitochondria matter. That's why my cells are doing that. Oh my gosh. I could have cared less in high school.
Right.
I was never I'm a writer. I'm a creative brain. But then all of a sudden it started relating on his level. And then as an athlete, how it related to, man, what I do for him can make little differences in myself or my kids that are trying to perform in sports. And you realize it's all connected.
Yeah.
It's all related.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't know. And then you have, so Mikey's 2 years younger?
Yeah, he's 2 years younger. I was actually going to ask you, because you're further down the line with your kids and their ages, how do your kids feel about the attention that he needs? Because I can tell already that Mikey is like, I got to find him his own thing. You know, I got to set up his play dates, and I got to find something that he can do that's for him, because they let him do OT. When we go to the occupational therapist, one of the students that's doing their hours there will always take him and do something with him. So he feels like OT is for both of them.
That's awesome.
But he knows speech is not for him. And that's 3 times a week that we drop Miles off. And he's like, I want to go. And I'm like, yeah, bud, you don't really need help with that area.
And yet at 3, he's like, wow, he's getting all kinds of special attention over there. He doesn't know that he's
right.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, the fact that you have that awareness already is huge. It's really, really hard because you do have to, it does take more manpower, right, to get them where they need to go. But then you also hit a point where as long as you're exposing them to things that, and you listen when they say, I really want to join the swim team, or I really want to go to acting class, or whatever it is, and you seek that out, it does even out. I mean, like, the awareness is huge because it is, you have to be very
small victories for Miles. And with Mikey, it's like, oh, well, he's been like way above average with his speech since before, you know, I remember going to the doctor and they're like, they should have at least 5 words. I'm like, he has like 30.
He's talking.
Right.
Yeah.
He's like just saying full sentences. Like he corrects me sometimes. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
our expectations are just different.
And truthfully, celebrating the little things, I mean, for any of us is really a good way to go. Right?
I know.
Like it kind of is.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I think just normalizing. I think that the relationship, if hopefully they foster a relationship that's really friendly. Like
it is
my
right
kids,
now. They're really good. They're best buds.
If they can, I mean, that is like such a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And it does end up being mutually beneficial, but it has its ups and downs. It has its bumps. Right. I've noticed that with mine, it's like if the world's coming after him, they are going to go off on whoever's coming after him.
Right.
But if he's going after them and they've had it with his, like, whatever, if it's negative today or they're, you know, he's just kind of poking just to get a rise out of someone, you know, they'll go after him. Yeah. You know what I mean? They're like, you don't act like that. Yeah. And that's the other thing too, is like, you can't let them off the hook.
Yes.
Like sometimes we get ourselves in a mindset that it's like, oh, that's because, and then all of a sudden I'll be like, oh, that was just 14-year-old boy nonsense.
Right.
Like, cut it out. I wouldn't have I'm not putting up with that.
I just started implementing consequences because I'm like, we can't just be having him work for something that's a prize or you know, that's a reward. He also has to realize that there are consequences. Like, you're not going to get any iPad time today now because you got a bad report in school today or whatever it is. You weren't able to keep a quiet voice today, so try again tomorrow and you can maybe have some iPad time. Like that's like our new thing. Cause I'm like, every other kid his age has to experience consequences. Yeah. Why are we only focusing on, you know, we're going to reward you if you do.
Yeah.
So it's
true.
And
it's not focusing on the negative, but it is the appropriate challenge and then letting them see that they can challenge up a little bit. Now you don't like shoot the moon to give them something that they absolutely can't handle.
Right.
But like that comes in that flow neuroscience. It's that challenge, skills, balance and getting that right because every kid needs that. Whether you're an athlete or a student or on the spectrum or not on the spectrum. Right. So, but it takes a ton of awareness and it takes a ton of patience.
Oh my gosh. Some days I'm like, last night I was like, it has been a day. I need to go to yoga and I need you to my husband was like, go, I'll do the dinner and I'll do the bath. And when you get home, they'll be asleep. And I'm like, okay. Because it's just like one of those things. And I even said to the boys, I said, sometimes mommies need breaks. Sometimes mommies need to just take a break. You know, sometimes you say, I need a break. Well, sometimes mommies need them too. So I just need to leave the house. And so we go inside and Mikey's sitting there ready for his dinner. And he's like, I need to leave the house. And he's like, repeating what I said. I was like, well, when you're an adult, you can leave the house.
You're like,
but
you're
right
3,
now,
so stay here.
I said, you can leave the house with one of us. Mommy can leave the house on her own because I'm an adult.
I've earned the right. And I'm leaving now.
But they copy everything that you say. I mean, he does anyway.
So how long have you been doing yoga?
Oh, when Soho Yoga opened, I started going there. When did they open?
I want to say maybe 14, 15.
Wow. I remember thinking, I need to start going to yoga because I've been lying about doing yoga for a while now. Okay. Because like when you go to auditions, they'll be like, how are you with yoga? And I'd be like, oh.
I'm great.
I practiced like 1 or 2 times a week. I was not practicing at all. I didn't know anything about it. I had not found a studio that I liked. I think I'd taken like a class here and there.
Okay.
But it's like they want you to have some yoga skills for some reason on most jobs that you
super interesting.
There was a period of time where everyone asked that. Like, what level are you with yoga? Like, it was just weird. Okay. Everyone asked it. So I'd be like, I'm like beginner intermediate, even though I was like way beginner.
Okay.
So I was like, I'm going to actually commit to like actually doing this. And I just loved their classes. I'd been to so many other places like over the years.
Totally
where I've been like, I don't want to come back here.
I probably tried to get into yoga 3 or 4 times over 10 years.
Right.
And maybe, blaming it on the age of the kids. But then I got super into swimming. So I started swimming and I never went back to yoga because I never hit a spot that I was comfortable or that I really enjoyed. And then I went to Soho and I was like,
and
then
it feels like there's a good mix of like athletes there,
Yeah.
but also people that will keep you on track with like your breath. You know what I mean?
And that awareness,
feels like
I had
there's a
never
good balance.
I had never felt that awareness
No,
before.
me neither.
And that mind-body connection. And it was such a game changer.
Yeah, when I did that meditation that you led, I was like, oh my God, this is like a secret that I just found out. I can do this at night when I can't sleep. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, I feel so relaxed.
Yeah. Did we do the yoga nidra one when I
Yeah,
it
I
went
think
like
so.
the body
Yes.
scan? Yeah.
Yeah.
So cool.
That was really good.
Right?
I really liked that.
Yeah, I mean, and then you can teach it to your kids.
Yes.
Right?
My mom actually used to have a cassette tape that she would play when we were kids.
Yeah.
And it did that. It told you to relax all the way down, and we would wait until it said buttocks, and we would just laugh
Oh my
so
God,
hard.
that's so
all we were just waiting. We're like, put that tape in. We weren't really trying to relax our entire body.
Yeah.
We just wanted to hear someone say butt. And we thought that was like the funniest
Right?
thing ever. But I remember, I'm like, man, she was so ahead of her time
know.
to have a tape that taught you how to just relax your entire body before you went to sleep.
Totally. And you know what? The funny thing is like I write all this stuff when I talk about generational learning, and then I also know time and a place. Like you have to be open. You have to be a certain age. There's certain lessons we're only going to learn when we go through them. There's certain ages that you're not like stuff's not going to resonate with you.
Right.
But the fact that like it's being modeled, right? That they'll remember, like you
Yes.
remember from your mom when they hit that point in life. I always say like if my kids don't read my blog till they're 40, like so be it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But when they're 40, they're going to have it.
Yeah.
And that I always think is just
I think that's so valuable too, because I was thinking about it yesterday, actually. I was thinking the challenges of parenthood really make you remember your own childhood a lot. Like it makes
Yeah.
you face a lot of things from your own childhood, but it also makes you have this brand new understanding of what your parents must have been going through and feeling and
Yeah.
and dealing with. And now there's so much talk about, you know, generational trauma and the way that we pass down all of these different things. And I don't think there was a lot of people talking about that back then. People
would
felt
agree.
very alone.
Yes.
You know, people were
and
very
the choices
isolated.
and the choices were different. I feel like not
Oh,
that
yeah.
we haven't always had free will, but talk about caring what people think about you, right?
Right.
I mean, women weren't people didn't leave unhealthy relationships.
No.
Right? And my friend, she brought up the other day, like, I love this girl. You need to read her blog, Chrissy Kelly. She's got 2 boys on the spectrum. She writes this beautiful blog that is not about life on the spectrum. It's about all the beauty of life. And she just is an awesome mom. But she's got a list of words going. And Chrissy, sorry, I hope I'm not blowing your secret, but one of the words on her list, I won't blow her whole list, but is broken home. And she said, I am so tired of the word broken home.
Ugh.
When it, especially as it relates to the 2-parent household.
Right.
And she said, you can have a broken home with 2 parents. You can have a broken home with 1 parent.
100%.
You can have a healing home with 1 parent.
Right.
Or 2 parents.
I mean, my parents divorced when
Like-
I was 3 and remarried to each other when I was 6. So I might have been 7. But I mean, my dad had a really bad addiction with drugs and alcohol. And my mom was like, we can't live like this. Like, this cannot be the house that they grow up in. So she kicked him out and we went and got our own place. And he got sober during the time that they were separated, not right away, but during the time that they were separated, he got sober. And then he came back into our life in a responsible way, like as a dad again. And they kind of rekindled. But I think my mom always did it for us.
Yeah.
Because she was so focused on that like broken home idea. Like,
Yeah.
oh, they need a mom and a dad in the house.
And that can
you know?
be crippling.
Right. We were fine. I mean, honestly, like it was great that my dad came back because he was like a coach and he was so helpful for us. And he brought in a lot more like rules and stuff. My mom's a lot easier. Like if she
Okay.
says, you're grounded, and we said, oh, can we get off grounding? She'd be like, yeah. My dad would be like, you get another week for asking. You know what I mean?
Okay.
Like he was so much more strict.
Okay.
So he brought in this other level, which was really good for us, like through our teenage years, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if she would have never made him leave, if we would have stayed during that addiction, I mean, how traumatized would we have been by all of those memories? I mean, we all deal with what we do and don't sort of remember, but that's like, you know.
Yeah. And there's a lot to that. You talked, I mean, we have a incredible ability to block out what we don't want.
Absolutely.
You know?
I have little flashes of things that I
It's,
remember, but you know, my mom said, she was like, you were so much more mature than you should have been, because she would worry about money out loud with us, and we're like in car seats, you know. And my mom said that one time. I said, well, why don't you worry about it when the time comes? And she was like, oh my God, like Monica's like, she's in a car seat. And she's like, you know, like
she's telling her mom to stay present.
And it was the 80s. So I mean, car seats were like, you used them until they were what? 3?
No, you're 3. Yeah. Or less than.
Yeah. So it's kind of, it's wild. Yeah. About I hate to cut you off about the blog just, about the broken home thing.
Yeah. So no, but it's just that concept of like generational trauma, and how I really do believe like each generation we can keep getting better, but it takes a whole lot of self-awareness and a whole lot of self-forgiveness and a whole lot of forgiveness on the other thing I always say is people are doing the best they can with what they know.
Right.
And then where we go from there is like, it's our obligation to keep learning. Mm-hmm. And you either choose to keep learning, and it makes you look at really difficult aspects of yourself and your family and still love. Right? I mean, it's not a matter of pointing fingers. It's like, and it's funny, just the more we talk, like how much forgiveness is a part of your story, and how much you can grow through all of that.
And watching people grow and change makes you realize that sometimes when you're judging someone in the midst of their story, you have to like remember, you have to remind yourself like that you don't know the whole story, and you also don't know where they're on their way to. I always, whenever I make a snap judgment about someone, I always ask myself, like, why did you just think that? Like, I always have to like have a conversation with myself. Like, don't do that. You wouldn't want someone to do that to you. Mm-hmm. You don't like when people do that to you when you know they're doing it. Yeah. You know, when I say I'm an actor, they're, what have I seen you in? And I'm like, oh gosh, this person is judging me. Yeah. And I don't like that. But you know, I judge, everybody judges.
It's human.
Yeah.
For sure. So, only because you were the first actress I've had on the podcast. And I know you said you played sports a little bit growing up, right?
Yeah.
And went to Redondo High School?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything that you see that from your sports background that has helped you in the acting world?
Oh, 1,000%. Like I can see people that were never athletes, that never played a team sport in like a second. Because when you're on set, it's a team effort. And some people have a bigger job than others, but everyone's job is necessary that's there, especially when like COVID hit and it was like only the necessary people need to be on set. And there were so many people still. So all of those people were necessary. And it's like, it felt very much like a team effort. And so to me, I've always been like a team player. I've never wanted to like upset the coach. I've never like cried at practice. I've cried like after practice, but I've never like cried. Like I had a lot of girls that I grew up with that would just be like, you know, just start crying at practice. And I'd be like, stop it.
Not okay.
But I mean, I know some people cry easier than others, but anytime I've ever been on set, I've never, ever, ever made it about me, ever. And I know a lot of people do, because a lot of people see their job as more important than someone else's. In the entertainment industry. Maybe you're getting paid more, so you think you're more important. And I never feel that way. I always feel like this person's job is as important, if not more important than mine, because they're here before I got here and they're going to be here after I leave. So, and that comes from sports, 100%. Yeah. 100%. Like that, I feel like sports, team sports especially, if you can be involved in them, it just it teaches you so much about life, about how to get along with people, how to make it work. Yeah. You know, my son just started baseball. It's his first ever team sport. Yeah. And it's hard for me to explain to him, like, you're all on the same team. Like, if the ball rolls past you and someone else gets it, great. Yeah. Someone got the ball and they're going to throw it. You know, it's hard to explain that right now because he's so young and it's you know, complicated.
Yeah, you're just, like you said, you're just dipping your toe in. It's fun. Right. I mean, it's been one of my most fun journeys. I love my own sports, but watching my kids play. Yeah. And then my third born went from sports to acting, so that question was a little bit. Yeah. And
have you asked her? What does she think?
Oh, she's tenacious. Ashley actually coached her. Ashley's over here taking some notes, but like what she took from, she was always a really hard worker and held herself to a really high standard, still does. And she came home last night, she walked in and she said, she looked really tired after rehearsal, and they're getting ready. They're going to do Mamma Mia at Redondo in a couple weeks.
I want to go.
It's real. I'll send you the information.
Awesome. Yes.
And she said, well, Mom, the girl, she's the backup, or what do you call it? Like
understudy.
The understudy for Rosie, and Rosie got strep throat. But she ended up coming back. But Kate had one night where she thought she was going to have to learn, or she had to learn everything. Oh. And so she said, I'm so tired because I stayed up last night because I had to learn 2 dances, and, I had to, and then the girl came back and she was like, Mom, I'm so tired. And she's like, it's okay. But like, you're managing a lot of feelings there.
When you're really tired, your emotions are so raw.
Right? And
so raw.
It happens in a whole long volleyball tournament weekend, right? You've got girls crying on the side, like they got 5 hours of sleep because, and you're managing a lot of emotion. Yeah. And that's,
and you're trying not to be in your head because you're part of a team and you can't make it about you.
Exactly. And she is a team player. Right. And I saw that, but it's like, you have a right to your own feelings, and you have a right to be like, yes, I want what's best for the cast, but you're also like,
and that's another thing too that I have to tell myself sometimes. It's okay to like raise your hand and say like, I don't, I need to stop for a second because I'm uncomfortable, but it's just, it's so instilled to just not, just wait until everybody's going to take a break, or just wait until. Yeah.
So, I mean, the toughness definitely shows through, and she, but acting's tough. Like the first time I saw her get up on that stage, and I was like, that's way scarier than playing volleyball. Like, I mean, like there's nobody to catch you. There's that mic.
And on stage, up. There's not like, take, let's do another take. Yeah. It's like the show must go on. You just gotta keep going.
I am super proud. It's fun. It's really fun to watch. And I love Broadway, and I love all the musicals and all that stuff. So it's fun.
I really want one of my boys to want to do that. Like I brought Miles to see West Side Story.
Oh yes.
And I was like, please like this.
You could be in West Side Story. You could have done that role.
Story.
You totally could have done that role.
Yeah, right. I would have been like 10 feet taller than the guy. Like, they always ask you your height. I lie. I'm like, I'm 5'9". Oh, don't keep that in.
That's the opposite of athletics.
I know. I say I'm shorter because the guys are saying they're taller, and so.
Yeah, my daughter who plays beach volleyball is 5'9", and she thinks she got gypped. Like she's the shortest of the 4, and she's like, I'm like,
that is really tall. Short in your family.
Yeah, but exactly. So the way I usually wrap these up is by asking a question of like, if you could give advice to your younger self, what is something that you would give as a takeaway? Like if you were talking to your younger self.
Oh, that's hard. I think what I would tell myself then that I still need to tell myself now sometimes is that just be yourself and don't worry about being yourself, because your people will find you and be around you and come to you. And when you're younger and you're kind of trapped in these smaller worlds of school, you feel like you have to conform to everyone around you in order for people to like you or in order to get by. And I thought for a really long time that being myself was not going to make me successful with friendships or with relationships. And being myself is actually what's given me a lot more success. Yeah. In all different areas of my life.
Freedom. So, right? Yeah. And I guess that is something I guess.
And everyone always says that. Be yourself. Be yourself. Yeah. And it's so much easier said than done. And it's a lifelong battle for a lot of people. But if someone would have told me, it doesn't matter if you're not cool right now. Later down the road, you're going to be very happy with your life and with the people that surround you. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Probably wouldn't have believed it. Well, yeah. I'd be like, yeah, right. I need to be cool. Yeah. I need to wear this, and I need to do my hair like this and do my.
And if there was I know all of that. Yeah. And somehow it does kind of slip away over the years, right?
But you can't protect people from going through that process. That's another thing, is that you can't tell people what to do, because then they don't get to experience the thing that changes them. Yeah. Yeah. You don't want anyone to get hurt. You don't want anyone to make a mistake, but they sometimes have to. Yeah. Because that's when you learn.
For sure. And then the last question I was going to ask you is if there was something you want the world to, a way that you want the world to be, to accept people more freely with all kinds of different abilities. Like what do we need to lead with?
Honesty. People need to be open. And it's so hard for people to be open because it's modeled in your home. And a lot of people are not open in their homes because of, the way they were raised. But if you can't come out and say, my feelings are hurt or something like that, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like.
And be heard.
Right.
Yeah.
And when people are honest with how they're actually feeling, even if it's putting them in somewhat of a vulnerable position or state, other people are willing to listen a little bit more. Because everyone is so combative. Everyone wants to argue, right?
Coming back all over.
But it's like, can we all agree that this is kind of funny?
Yeah.
Can we all agree that, that expression was kind of, So I wish people would just hear each other out,
Yeah.
Let's just sit down and have a conversation. Even if we're complete opposite, we're going to come to a agreement on something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always say we're more alike than we are different.
That's absolutely true. I agree.
Yeah. Well, this was super fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for making time out of your schedule. I know little kids and dropping things.
It's a nice little break.
Good. I know. Mommy breaks are good too.
What? I get to go talk to another adult without being interrupted constantly? What?
Yeah, totally. So maybe we'll do it again someday.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Other than that, we'll see you at yoga. And where can people find you?
My Instagram is Mon Pearl. It was that, 10 years ago when Instagram started, and I didn't realize it was a social media site. My sister's like, you're sharing pictures. I'm like, what? I thought it was a camera app.
That's a story in itself.
I thought it was a camera app. But yeah, so I've had that forever. And people are like, you should change it. But I'm like, no, that's been my name forever. So it's Mon Pearl. My middle name is Pearl. So.
Okay. Beautiful.
And that's pretty much the only place. I don't have like a TikTok or a
kind of love that.
A Facebook or anything.
Who has time, right?
I don't even know how to work it.
I much prefer the real world.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. These conversations.
Yeah, go deeper.
Yep.
Be real. I love it. Well, thanks for joining me today. This was so fun.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us for the What I Meant to Say podcast. For more real conversations like this one, come on over to the Be Better community at www.bebetterwithwendyjones.com, a place for athletes and parents to grow and find meaning behind what we do every day so that we can be strong on our own and better together.